Okay, so vestibule into the wind or tail into the wind, there are definite advantages and disadvantages of each. Obviously I'm sitting at the moment in my Hilleberg Jannu and it is tail into the wind. And if you can maybe look back and you'll see towards the back of the tent, the back of the tent is getting buffeted a little bit, whereas if I was vestibule into the wind, I would be a little bit more sheltered. But the big benefit, obviously, of going tail into the wind is the fact that I have this vestibule here and I've had this open all night and been able to cook and set up a tent and do everything from that. Vestibule into the wind, you're a little bit more restricted. So we'll look now at some of the shots and sort of from the outside and looking at the tents, and you see what's actually happening. So here, we've got the back of both of the tents, and you can certainly hear that Gary's red Jannu, there's a lot less going on at the back than what there would be on mine. There's a little bit of pole distortion, not too much, and the outer is pushing against the inner a little bit. But based on the conditions tonight, we've actually measured about 44 mile an hour winds, and based on the 44 mile an hour wind, certainly so far, I think I personally would prefer to go vestibule or tail into the wind, because the tent doesn't seem under any real pressure. But certainly if the winds were more than that, then if they were 50 mile an hour, for example, then I would definitely go vestibule into the wind. And I think maybe vestibule into the wind is maybe slightly easier to pitch. So the idea of the whole video tonight, Hilleberg have done a similar video, but they haven't shown you the tents side by side. They've just done on one of their tunnel tents. I think it's maybe a Nallo. And you can sort of see the difference, but here we have the two tents side by side, and sometimes you can really appreciate something when you actually see the tents side by side. But inside a tent, it may actually, I think he's taken some video footage and we can have a look at that. It may actually be a little bit quieter inside a tent because the vestibule has taken up some of the wind, and then it sort of shelters a little bit more of the inner. But the main difficulty is, it's not really a difficulty, it still is doable, and that is cooking in the tent. I've been able, as I said, to cook with this completely open. Gary's been completely sealed but still has absolutely managed. So it's a tough one. Tonight, if the winds are up to 50 miles an hour, I certainly feel comfortable enough that this tent is able to handle that absolutely no problem, tail into the wind. But vestibule into the wind, you can see with the way the pole structure is set up that it is that little bit more stable. So I'm not going to rant on here forever. The main thing was to let you sort of see mountain conditions, 44 mile an hour winds, possibly gusting up to 50, and see two tents sitting side by side, so you can make a decision yourself on which way that you want to go. Hello, this is not an interruption to the video, but actually just an add-on. Sometimes when you're out actually filming in real world conditions, you don't say or do everything that you actually want to. So what I want to do now is just take the opportunity to sort of talk about a couple of things that I didn't mention, but I would have liked to during the video. Now, one viewer commented on my past video, which was about pitching the Hilleberg Jannu vestibule into the wind. He actually mentioned that we didn't demonstrate how to get in and out of the tent. Now, under these conditions here, it wasn't really too much of an issue, but obviously when the wind gets higher, then it could become an issue. And I think really and it can definitely become an issue if the wind is maybe hitting the tent diagonally. So you have two entrances on the vestibule, and I think you gotta just use whichever one has the greatest amount of shelter. Unzip it from the bottom, but keep a hold of the zipper pull while you then actually get into the tent, and then zipper it down. So I didn't demonstrate this, as I said, because it wasn't a problem, but that's really how you would do it, and you just have to be careful. I would say, and I did mention it previously, that 50 mile an hour is probably, the cutoff. But once it gets more than that, the most important factor is structural integrity of the tent, and that will be achieved better vestibule into the wind. And finally, like all of these things, you need to go out and practice them, maybe under slightly less challenging conditions, before then you're doing it when it is really challenging, because small aspects can make a really big difference. So that's really all extra I wanted to say. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time.